I used to believe that Celeste and I had a good marriage. Not perfect because what marriage is? But strong enough to withstand anything. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 5, and for most of that time, I truly thought we were happy. I worked hard as a financial analyst, bringing in good money, and she ran a small online business selling boutique jewelry. At least, that's what she told me. Looking back, maybe I was too trusting. Or maybe I just didn't want to see the signs. The first red flag was subtle. Celeste became more distant little things at first. She stopped texting me as much during the day, claiming she was too busy. When I got home from work, she'd be locked in our bedroom or the guest room, saying she was editing product photos or handling customer emails. She started dressing differently too, more makeup, tighter clothes, even around the house. At first, I chalked it up to her wanting to feel more confident, which I encouraged, but then came the late nights. Celeste started staying out later than usual, sometimes not coming home until 2 or 3 in the morning. When I asked her, she laughed it off, saying she was just out with some business friends, networking. It didn't sit right with me, but I had no proof that anything was wrong. Yet, the real breaking point came when she started guarding her phone like her life depended on it. She used to leave it lying around, but now it was either in her pocket or face down on the table, always locked. If I even glanced at it, she'd get defensive, saying I was being paranoid. Something was off. I could feel it, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. It was a Friday night when my suspicions turned into something much worse. Cold, undeniable proof. Celeste had told me she was going out with the girls. That was nothing new. Lately, her girls' nights had been happening more frequently, and the excuses always sounded rushed, as if she barely cared whether I believed her or not. That night, something felt different. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut, the one I'd been ignoring for weeks. So, after she left, I decided to do something I'd never done before in our marriage. I went into her office. Celeste never let me into her workspace. She claimed it was her creative zone, where she handled her business, but I had a strong feeling she wasn't just selling jewelry anymore. I sat down at her desk, staring at her laptop. It was locked, of course. But I knew Celeste well, and she wasn't as careful as she thought. After a few tries, I entered the right password, our anniversary date, and that's when my world came crashing down. The desktop was cluttered with folders. Some were labeled with innocent names like invoices and shipping, but one folder caught my eye. It was named Clips. I clicked it first. I saw a bunch of video thumbnails. I expected them to be harmless, maybe old vacation footage or something from a party. But then I noticed the previews. My breath caught in my throat. There she was, Celeste. Wearing almost nothing. With another man.no. Not just one man. Multiple men.my. Hands were shaking as I clicked the first video. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to be sure I wasn't seeing things. But the second the clip started playing, there was no denying what I was looking at. Celeste wasn't just cheating on me. She was filming it, and judging by the sheer number of files, she had been doing it for a long time. I felt sick. My stomach churned, and I had to push back the bile rising in my throat. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who was this woman? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why? But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to sit back and let this go unanswered. Celeste had some explaining to do. I sat there in stunned silence, my mind racing. I wanted to believe there was some kind of mistake, some explanation that made sense. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. The evidence was right in front of me: videos, files, folders. Celeste had been cheating on me. And she had been filming it. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. My body was shaking, fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. I needed answers. I needed to hear it from her mouth. I grabbed my phone and called her. No answer. I texted. Where are you? No response. I wasn't going to wait around like an idiot. Not after what I just saw. I grabbed my jacket and got in my car, my mind still a storm of betrayal and disbelief. Celeste had mentioned earlier that she was meeting up with her friends at a new upscale lounge downtown. I barely remembered the name, but I knew the area well enough. If she was lying, I was about to find out firsthand. The place was packed when I arrived. Dim lights, soft music, expensive drinks, and people dressed like they were trying too hard to impress each other. I scanned the room, my heart hammering. And then I saw her, Celeste. She was sitting in a booth near the back, laughing, twirling her hair around her finger. And she wasn't alone. A tall, muscular guy was sitting next to her, his arm draped lazily across the back of the booth. She was leaning into him, whispering something in his ear, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. She looked nothing like the woman I married. Something inside me snapped. I stormed over to the table, and before she could react, I spoke. Having fun? Her head jerked up. For a split second, pure shock flashed across her face. But then, just as quickly, she masked it with an irritated sigh. Oh my God, Bruce. What are you doing here? She huffed, rolling her eyes like I was an inconvenience. I glared at her, my blood boiling. That's my question for you, Celeste. My voice was sharp, low, barely controlled. The guy next to her just smirked, lazily sipping his drink like this was all some kind of joke. Celeste crossed her arms and leaned back. I told you I was out with friends. I laughed a cold, humorless laugh. Oh, yeah? And does he know you've been making sex tapes with other guys, too? That got her attention. Her eyes widened for half a second before she quickly composed herself. You went through my laptop, she hissed. That was her concern. Not the fact that she had been cheating. Not the fact that she had been filming it. I shook my head in disbelief. That's all you have to say? Are you serious right now? She let out a dramatic sigh, rubbing her temples like I was exhausting her. Bruce, listen, it's not what you think. I slammed my hands on the table, leaning in. Then tell me, Celeste. What exactly am I thinking? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife has been screwing other men on camera. Her date was watching with mild amusement now, like this was some sort of free entertainment. Celeste shot him a look and then turned back to me, her expression hardening. Can we not do this here? She muttered under her breath. Oh, we're doing this right now. I had waited long enough for the truth. And I wasn't leaving until I got it. Celeste sighed dramatically, running a hand through her hair like I was some annoying inconvenience instead of her husband confronting her about her infidelity. Bruce, you're overreacting, she said, her voice dripping with irritation. Let's just go home and talk about this in private. I let out a bitter laugh. Overreacting? My wife was cheating on me and filming it and she thought I was the problem. No, Celeste. We're talking about this right here, right now. My voice was firm, low, and controlled, but the rage beneath it was undeniable. Who are these men? How long has this been going on? Her date was still lounging next to her, watching like he was enjoying a soap opera. I wanted to knock that smirk off his face, but right now, Celeste was the one who owed me answers. She rolled her eyes. It's just business, Bruce. Business? I blinked, completely thrown off by that response. What the hell does that mean? She sighed like she was talking to a child. It's content. It's not real cheating. It's just part of my work. My stomach twisted. Your work? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable now. I was going to tell you, okay? I didn't know how you'd react. I stared at her in disbelief. You didn't know how I'd react to finding out my wife was having sex with other men on camera? She actually had the nerve to shrug. You always told me I should find something I'm passionate about, she muttered. Well, I did. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. You think filming yourself with other men is a passion? She waved a dismissive hand. It's not like that. It's just business, Bruce. It's professional. I get paid. It's not about feelings or emotions. I could feel my pulse hammering in my temples. So, let me get this straight. You're telling me you're a porn star? Her expression darkened. Don't be dramatic. I wouldn't call it that. I scoffed. Then what would you call it, Celeste? She exhaled sharply. It's just adult content creation, okay? It's independent, it's empowering, and honestly, Bruce? You should be happy for me. I actually felt dizzy for a moment. Happy? She wanted me to be happy that my wife was sleeping with other men? You're unbelievable, I muttered, shaking my head. Do you even feel guilty? Do you even care what this is doing to me? Her expression hardened, and suddenly, she was on the attack. Oh, come on, Bruce. Don't act like you're some perfect husband. You're boring. You work all the time, and when you come home, all you do is watch TV or go to bed early. When was the last time we even had sex? Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her spin this around on me. So that's your excuse? I asked. I work hard to provide for us, and because I don't entertain you enough, you decided to screw other men for money? She crossed her arms. It's not like you've ever been against watching this kind of stuff. What's the difference? I gritted my teeth. The difference, Celeste, is that the woman in those videos wasn't supposed to be my wife. For the first time, she looked slightly uneasy, but before she could say anything else, her date finally spoke up. You should probably leave, man. This isn't a good look for you. I turned to him, my rage barely contained. And who the hell are you? He grinned lazily. Just a friend. Celeste shot him a sharp look. Ethan, don't, I whipped back to her. Oh, so he gets a name? Great. How many friends like him do you have? She sighed in frustration. Bruce, can we just go home and talk about this? You're embarrassing yourself. I clenched my fists. Embarrassing myself, I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm of emotions inside me. No, Celeste. You've embarrassed me. You've humiliated me. And you know what? I think I've heard enough for tonight. I turned on my heel and started walking away. She didn't chase after me, she didn't call my name, and somehow, that hurt the most that I drove home in complete silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the engine. My mind was spinning so fast I could barely focus on the road. Every time I blinked, I saw Celeste's face, her cold, detached expression, the way she looked at me like I was the problem for confronting her. She didn't even try to stop me from leaving. That part stung the most. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. This was my home, our home, but now it felt foreign. Contaminated. Like nothing inside those walls was real anymore. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The place was quiet. Too quiet that I collapsed onto the couch, running my hands through my hair, trying to make sense of everything. Celeste had been cheating on me, but it wasn't just cheating. She was filming it. She was profiting off it. And she actually had the nerve to act like I was overreacting. How long had this been going on? Had it started before we were married? Had she ever really loved me, or was I just some stable safety net while she lived out her double life? I needed more answers. I stood up abruptly, heading straight for the home office where I had found her laptop. If she had hidden that much from me, what else was she hiding? The laptop was still where I left it, the screen dark. I opened it and entered the password again, our anniversary date. The fact that she hadn't even changed it made me sick. The clips folder was still there, staring at me like a ticking time bomb. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I clicked it open and scrolled. There were dozens of videos. Some were named by date, others had vague titles like VIP Session or Custom Order. Custom Order, my stomach lurched. I clicked on one of the most recent files. The video loaded, and there she was, Celeste. She was in our bedroom. Our bed. The same bed we had shared for years. Only now, she wasn't alone that I couldn't watch for more than a few seconds before I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was racing, my breath uneven. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This wasn't an affair that just happened. This was an operation. A business, and I had been blind to it the whole time. As if the universe wasn't done kicking me in the teeth, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Celeste. We need to talk. I stared at the message, my hands trembling that I didn't know what she wanted to say, but at this point, I wasn't sure I even cared anymore. All I knew was that I wasn't done with this conversation, not by a long shot. Celeste's text sat on my phone screen like a taunt. We need to talk. Oh, now she wanted to talk. Now that I knew everything. Now that she had been caught, I wanted to ignore her. I wanted to block her number, pack my bags, and disappear from her life without another word. But the anger inside me wouldn't let that happen. I needed to hear what kind of pathetic excuse she had prepared. I needed to look her in the eye and see if there was even a shred of remorse. So, I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't. I texted her back. Come home. Now. The next 30 minutes felt like an eternity. I paced the living room, my mind replaying every single moment of our marriage that now felt like a lie. I stared at our wedding photos on the wall, the smiling faces that no longer meant anything. By the time I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway, I was ready. Celeste walked in like she owned the place, completely calm, her face unreadable. She had changed out of her revealing club outfit and into a loose sweater and leggings, like she thought dressing down would soften the blow. I wasn't buying it. She dropped her purse on the counter and folded her arms. Bruce, she said, like she was about to lecture me. We really need to handle this like adults. I laughed. Actually laughed. A cold, bitter sound. Like adults? I repeated. You mean like how you handled our marriage? By secretly screwing other men and filming it? She rolled her eyes and sighed like I was overreacting. I told you, it's not what you think. My jaw clenched. Then what the hell is it, Celeste? Because from what I saw on your laptop, it looks like you've been living a completely separate life. She licked her lips, hesitating, but then shook her head. Look, Bruce. I never wanted to hurt you. I cut her off. If you didn't want to hurt me, you wouldn't have lied for who knows how long. You wouldn't have used our home, our bed for your disgusting little side job. Her face hardened. It's not disgusting. It's empowering. And you know what? I was right not to tell you, because this is exactly how I knew you'd react. I blinked, stunned for a second. She was blaming me. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. You're actually trying to flip this on me? She threw up her hands. Bruce, come on. You've never exactly been passionate about me. You're always working, always stressed, and honestly, our sex life was dead. I felt like I had been slapped. That's your excuse? I asked, my voice low. Because I was working to provide for us? Because I didn't worship you 24/7, you decided to get attention from strangers online? Her lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't even denying it anymore. You don't get it, she finally said. This is my choice. My body, my decision. And yeah, I should have told you sooner, but I didn't owe you that. I just stared at her, something in me snapping. You didn't owe me the truth. I'm your husband, Celeste. She exhaled loudly. Bruce, be honest with yourself. We were over long before this. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. So that was it. She had already checked out of our marriage. I was just the fool who hadn't realized it yet. That I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Then why are you still here? I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. For the first time, she actually looked uncomfortable because I didn't want to lose everything we built, she admitted. I still care about you, Bruce. I really do. But I also care about me. And this is who I am now. I swallowed hard, my chest tight. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But all I felt was empty. So what now? I asked, my voice hollow. Celeste shifted her weight. I don't know, she said softly. But I don't want us to end like this. I let out a slow breath, my hands shaking. Celeste, we ended the moment you pressed record on those videos. Her expression faltered for a second. Just for a second, and then, she nodded, as if she had expected that answer, but I wasn't done yet. That I had one more question, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like the answer. That I stared at Celeste, my mind buzzing with everything she had just said. Her excuses, her twisted logic, her complete lack of remorse, it was all swirling together into something I could barely process, but there was one thing I still needed to know. One question I had been avoiding because I wasn't sure if I could handle the answer. That I took a slow breath, my voice quiet but firm. How long? Celeste frowned. What? How long has this been going on? I repeated, my fists clenched at my sides. When did you start? I gestured vaguely, unable to even say it out loud. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time since I caught her, she looked hesitant. That hesitation told me everything. That I felt my stomach drop. Celeste, I said, my voice sharper now. Tell me the truth. She chewed on her lip, looking down for a moment. Then she sighed. A little over 2 years. I blinked. My breath caught in my throat. 2 years, 2 years of my life. Our life had been a lie. That I staggered back, running a hand down my face. My heart was hammering. You mean to tell me, I said slowly, that for over 2 years, you've been sneaking around, doing this behind my back? She didn't even try to soften the blow. Yes. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Jesus Christ, Celeste. And you were just going to let me keep living in the dark forever? She exhaled. I thought about telling you. I almost did a few times. But I knew you'd react like this. Like this? I repeated, my voice rising. Like a husband who just found out his wife has been secretly filming herself having sex with other men for 2 years? She shook her head. See? This is what I mean. You're acting like I murdered someone. I felt a fresh wave of anger surge through me. You murdered our marriage. That, finally, made her flinch. That I stepped closer, forcing her to meet my eyes. Were you with anyone before you started filming? Her face went blank. That was all the answer I needed. That I felt like I had been punched in the gut. So, you cheated first. And then you decided to monetize it? She crossed her arms defensively. It wasn't like that at first. It was casual. A fling. And then someone made me an offer, and I realized I could actually make real money from it. A fling, she said it so easily, like it was nothing. That I stared at her, barely recognizing the woman standing in front of me. What's wrong with you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How can you say this to me like it's normal? Celeste sighed. Bruce, I get that you're hurt. But you need to understand that this was never about you. It was about me finding something that made me feel alive. I clenched my jaw. You needed other men to feel alive? She gave a small shrug. It's not just the sex, Bruce. It's the power. The attention. The fact that people want me. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like something was cracking open inside me. I wanted you, I said, my voice barely steady. Was that not enough? She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. That I let out a breath, stepping back like I had just been burned. Wow, I muttered. I really was just a placeholder for you, huh? Celeste shook her head quickly. No, Bruce. That's not true. I love you. I let out a bitter laugh. You loved me while you were screwing strangers on camera? While you were lying to my face every single day? She opened her mouth to argue, but then stopped. She knew she had nothing to say. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe guilt. Maybe regret. But it was too late for that now that I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. We're done, Celeste. She swallowed. Bruce, let's just— No, I cut her off. I mean it. We're done. She stared at me, processing those words, then she nodded. Just once, and I knew, in that moment, she had already moved on. That I turned away, my heart shattered into pieces, but I wasn't going to let her break me any further. It was time to walk away, for good. I turned away from Celeste, but my body felt heavy, like I was dragging chains behind me. I wanted to storm out, slam the door, and never look back. I wanted to erase every memory of her, every moment I thought she loved me, but I couldn't, not yet. There were still loose ends. I turned back, forcing myself to stay calm. I want a divorce. Celeste barely reacted. If anything, she looked relieved. That stung more than anything she had said so far. No tears. No fighting for our marriage. Just a quiet acceptance, like she had already made peace with it long before I did. She sighed, nodding. Okay. I clenched my fists. That's it? That's all you have to say? She shrugged. What do you want me to say, Bruce? I'm not going to beg you to stay. We're clearly not happy together. Not happy together, I nearly laughed. That was her excuse? She wasn't happy, so she went out and screwed strangers instead of talking to me, but I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. She wasn't worth it. Instead, I focused on the real problem. How much money have you made from this? I asked, my voice cold. That actually made her hesitate. Bruce, don't— How much? She shifted uncomfortably. Why does that matter? I took a step closer. Because you made it while you were still married to me. So unless you're planning to give me half of whatever you earned, it matters. Her lips pressed together. That money is mine, Bruce. I worked for it. I clenched my jaw. You worked for it? You mean you slept your way to it? She rolled her eyes. Oh, stop being dramatic. Do you even know how many women do this now? It's a real business. And I built it from nothing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She actually thought she was the victim here. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. I want half, I said again. If you think you can just walk away from this without consequences, you're wrong. She scoffed. And if I say no? I smirked. Then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how you built that business. Your family. Your friends. Your clients. Hell, I'll even take it to a lawyer and find a way to make sure you lose every cent. Her face finally changed. Her confidence wavered, just for a second. You wouldn't do that. I crossed my arms. Try me. She stared at me, calculating. Then, slowly, she sighed. Fine. I'll figure something out. I nodded. Good. I turned away, this time for real, but before I could walk out, she said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. You know, you could have had a part in this. I froze. Then, slowly, I turned my head. What did you just say? She smirked slightly, tilting her head. If you had been a little more open-minded, maybe we could have made this work together. Some couples do that, you know. They make content together. Maybe if you had been willing to try. I didn't even let her finish. I grabbed the nearest lamp from the table and threw it across the room. It crashed into the wall, shattering into pieces. Celeste gasped, stepping back, her face pale. I pointed a shaking finger at her. Don't you dare blame this on me. You're the one who destroyed this marriage. Not me. You. She was silent, for once that I turned again, this time without hesitation. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door that I didn't know what came next. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain, that I was never coming back. That I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, my mind replaying everything Celeste had said, every excuse, every betrayal. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The rage was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, but underneath it was something worse: emptiness. That I had just ended my marriage, and the woman I thought I knew? The woman I had built a life with, she barely fought for it. That I pulled into an empty parking lot and leaned my head against the steering wheel, trying to breathe. But no matter how much air I pulled into my lungs, I still felt like I was suffocating. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal on every level. She hadn't just slept with other men, she had built an entirely different life behind my back. She had chosen to keep me in the dark, and worst of all, she wasn't even sorry. That I was about to turn my phone off when it vibrated in my pocket. That I pulled it out, expecting another text from Celeste. Maybe some half-hearted attempt to justify what she'd done, but it wasn't her. It was Ethan, the guy from the lounge. The smug bastard who sat beside my wife while she laughed in my face. That I almost ignored it. Almost threw my phone across the car in frustration. But curiosity, or maybe something darker, made me answer. That I put the phone to my ear. What? There was a pause. Then a chuckle. Glad you picked up, Bruce. His voice was smooth, too casual, like we were old friends. My grip on the phone tightened. Why the hell are you calling me? Relax, man, he said. I just figured we should talk. You've got some things you should probably know. I frowned. I don't want to hear anything from you. You're part of this mess. Maybe, he admitted. But I'm also someone who's been around longer than you think. That made my stomach turn. What are you talking about? Ethan exhaled through the receiver. You're not the first guy Celeste has done this to. Silence. My pulse pounded in my ears. What? I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. He let out a humorless chuckle. Yeah, man. She's got a pattern. A routine. And from the look on your face at the lounge, I'm guessing you had no idea. I swallowed, my throat dry. How do you know this? Because, Ethan said, I was in your position once. The world tilted for a second. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen, like I needed to see the words to believe them. Then, slowly, I brought it back. You're lying, I said, but my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. Ethan sighed. I wish I was. But Celeste, she's got a habit of pulling in guys like us. Good men. Stable men. And then she does what she does. My breathing was uneven. How long ago? For years, he said. I did the math instantly. That was before we got married. I clenched my jaw. She never told me about you. She wouldn't, Ethan said. Because if she did, you might have figured out what she really is. My stomach churned. Had I been doomed from the start? She used me, Ethan continued. Drained me. Then she moved on, just like she's moving on from you. I leaned back against the seat, gripping the phone so hard I thought it might crack. I had spent years thinking I was building a life with this woman. Thinking we had something real, and the whole time, I was just another name on her list. I exhaled sharply. Why are you telling me this? Because, Ethan said, his voice lower now, I know what you're thinking. And I know exactly how dangerous it can be. I closed my eyes. I did know what he meant, because right now, I wasn't just angry. I was dangerous. Ethan's words lingered in the air, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. I know what you're thinking. And I know exactly how dangerous it can be. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dark road ahead. He wasn't wrong. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, humiliation, and something deeper, something primal. The kind of rage that made men do things they couldn't take back. I took a slow breath, trying to push the thoughts away. I wasn't going to be that guy. Celeste had already taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let her take my sanity, too, but I needed more. I put the phone back to my ear. How did it end for you? Ethan was silent for a moment before he exhaled. Not well. I let my anger control me. I wanted revenge, I wanted to hurt her like she hurt me. He paused. And in the end, she still walked away clean, while I was left looking like the crazy ex. I clenched my jaw. What did you do? He let out a dry chuckle. I confronted her in front of everyone. Her friends, her family. Thought if I exposed her, she'd finally feel some shame. But guess what? She didn't. I swallowed hard. I could picture it perfectly. Celeste twisting the situation, making herself the victim, turning everyone against him, against me. You think she's already spinning the story? I asked. Ethan didn't even hesitate. She's probably been spinning it since the moment you walked out that door. The realization made my stomach turn. Celeste wasn't the kind of person to sit back and take responsibility. She was calculating. She was already telling people whatever version of the truth made her look innocent, and me, I was just another disposable man in her past. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to suppress the rage clawing at my chest. So what do I do? Ethan was quiet for a moment. You disappear. I frowned. What? You get out. Fast. Before she finds a way to bury you. A heavy silence stretched between us. I thought about it. Leaving. Cutting all ties. Moving on without another word. It made sense. It was logical, but something inside me wasn't ready to let go yet, because Celeste might have moved on, but I wasn't done with her, not yet. I sat in my car for a long time after Ethan hung up, staring out at the darkened streets. My mind was racing, but one thought stood out above all the others. Celeste was already covering her tracks. I could almost hear the way she'd spin the story. Bruce was controlling. Bruce was insecure. Bruce didn't support me, so I had to find fulfillment elsewhere. She'd turn me into the villain, and people would believe her. That's what she did. She twisted reality until she came out looking like the misunderstood victim. And the worst part? I had no way to stop it, unless I gripped the steering wheel, my jaw tightening. Ethan had told me to walk away. To disappear before she had the chance to ruin me, but I wasn't ready to disappear, not until I had the final word. By the time I got back home, my mind was clear. No more second-guessing, no more drowning in betrayal. I had a plan. I walked straight to my office and powered up my laptop. I still had access to Celeste's files from earlier. If she thought I was just going to let this go, she was wrong. I clicked through the folders, my stomach twisting at the sheer volume of videos. There were names, timestamps, transactions. Proof of everything. She had built an entire business behind my back, and now I had evidence of it all, but exposing her wasn't enough. She had spent years making a fool out of me. Lying to my face while she lived a double life. No, I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her. I picked up my phone and typed out a message. Short. To the point. Meet me tomorrow. We need to settle this once and for all. I hit send. Celeste read the message immediately, but she didn't respond. Not right away. I could imagine her sitting there, debating whether she should even bother. Then, finally, 3 dots appeared. Her reply came through. Fine. Where? I smiled coldly. She thought she was in control. She thought she could manipulate me like she had manipulated everyone else. But tomorrow, I was taking that control back. Celeste agreed to meet. No hesitation, no fake remorse, just business as usual for her. I chose a neutral spot, a quiet coffee shop, public enough to keep things civil but private enough for what I had planned. I wasn't coming to beg. I wasn't coming for closure. I was coming to end this on my terms. Yes, I sat there, waiting. I felt it. Clarity. She had spent years lying to me, but this time, I held the truth, and by the time this was over, she wouldn't be able to lie her way out. Celeste walked into the coffee shop like she had nothing to lose. Confident. Unbothered. Like this was just another business deal, she slid into the seat across from me, tilting her head. So, what's this about, Bruce? You finally ready to be an adult about this? I almost laughed. She really thought she was still in control that I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I know everything, Celeste. Every video, every transaction. Every lie. For the first time, she hesitated. So, she said, but her voice wasn't as steady that I leaned in. You're going to give me my share. Half of everything. Or I go public. Her jaw tightened. You wouldn't. I smirked. Try me. She exhaled sharply, tapping her nails against the table. She was calculating, weighing her options, then, slowly, she nodded. Fine. I'll transfer the money. It was a lie. I could see it in her eyes, but that was fine, because I had one final move left to play. Celeste thought she could stall, drag this out, maybe even manipulate her way out of it. She was wrong that I slid a USB drive across the table. That's everything. If I don't get my share, this goes to your family, your clients, and the press. Her face paled. For the first time, she looked afraid. You're serious, she whispered that I leaned back, calm. You have 24 hours. She swallowed hard, eyes darting. She had no way out. For the first time in years, I was the one in control. 24 hours later, the money was in my account. Every cent. No tricks, no delays. Celeste didn't try to argue or negotiate. She knew she had lost. I blocked her number, packed my things, and walked away from the life I thought I had. No regrets. No second chances, just freedom. As I drove away, I didn't look back. Celeste had spent years playing games, but this time, I won.